I'm Devlin Reiley, and we are here for another episode of Reiley's Roundup, and I am so very excited for today. We have the Executive Director of the Fairy Godmother Project here in Fredericksburg, Andie McConnell. Andie, thank you so much. You're actually joining me virtually, and this is my first virtual show, so thank you so much for coming.
Oh, well, thank you, and thank you for accommodating my ask of having it virtually. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So we're going to just dive right in. The Fairy Godmother Project is a nonprofit that is just so special in every way, in every ounce of its being. It's just such a special nonprofit, and I'm still surprised that just all that you do. So could you kind of let the listeners know from the start to finish where you were in your life when you started and you founded the Fairy Godmother Project here in Fredericksburg, and what this nonprofit does?
Sure. So I started the organization in 2012 officially, but probably more started working with families. The first family I met who had a child with cancer was in 2009. And my relationship with that family taught me what it was like for families to experience childhood cancer. It's a very lonely experience, very trying. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of loneliness and a lot of worry involved. And often people that are directly engaged with the family, they mean well, but they don't know how to help. And so they do say things like, let me know if you need anything. And so I watched a lot of that happening for the family that I was getting to know. And after about a year of treatment and the child survived, which was amazing and wonderful, the mom asked me if I would be the girl's fairy godmother. Oh. And so that's where the name came from. So at the time I was married, and I said to my now ex-husband, maybe this is an actual need in our community. Maybe people need support like this. And what would that look like? So I started brainstorming and developed a program that is, in my opinion, unique to other organizations that support families who have children with cancer, because we focus on the caregiver rather than on the child. And what I mean by that is we provide day-to-day support in the home, like house cleaning, lawn care, meals. We provide financial support, like we do gas cards, grocery cards, we pay bills. We have what's called our crisis fund that helps if the family has a crisis on top of their already crisis-filled lives. So, and that's sort of where we started.
That's amazing. So I haven't had a lot of experience with families and seeing a family watch a child go through cancer and everything about it. So you guys come in and kind of lift off those worries that they have, that everybody has our normal day-to-day life, but you kind of help with those extra chores and keeping the house maintained while they can focus their love and attention on the child. Is that right?
Yes. So our goal, exactly. Our goal is that we can do that for them, that we can provide that support so they can better focus on their children. One of our moms years ago, after her daughter died, said that we gave them, essentially the gift of time, because they didn't have to clean their house. They didn't have to do the lawn. They didn't have to do those things. Instead, they could be with their family.
Well, so when you first started, how many families would you say you guys were assisting?
In the very beginning, all of our families, I live in South Stafford, so all of our families were in South Stafford because that was where my connections were, so people would hear about what I was doing or they were volunteering. So at the beginning, we started, when we had the idea to start the organization, my co-founder, Stephanie Johnson Maurer, and I had this conversation, like, how will we find a family? Like, where are these people? And a neighbor of hers had a child diagnosed in a very short period of time after we had decided to get this started. So they were our first family. Their daughter had leukemia, and we supported them for 3 years. So they kind of had our support from the very, very beginning, when we had no idea really what we were doing, and we weren't really official, all the way until we kind of were a little bit more established.
And from our conversations over the years, you've even mentioned that you've sat with the parents in some of those very tough doctors' meetings with the doctors that are treating the children. Is that right?
Yes. So
Wow.
one of the programs I didn't go into in my initial explanation of who we are was established because I had an experience with a family. They had me go with them to a doctor's appointment, and it happened to be a doctor's appointment where they were told by the doctor that there was nothing left that could be done for their child. And his advice was to essentially take her home and love her and make it the best time that she could have. There was no definite on how long she had.
Mm-hmm.
And being part of that obviously was profound and life changing for me. I kind of look back and think, how did I even wind up standing there with that family doing that?
Right.
But what that did was the mom then invited me to be part of the whole experience. So
Wow.
I was there when hospice was called. I was there for the hospice intake meeting. I actually experienced all of that. I was there when she started taking her last breaths. So, in a 2 week time period, I spent a great deal of time with the family. But the reason that the mom asked me to be in it and be part of it was because by then her daughter had been in treatment for a while and she knew me well enough that she knew that if I saw the reality of it, that I would do something, which I did. So I started another program.
So, I mean, to be able to do that, it takes such a special person, and I'm sure I'm not the first person that has made that comment to you. It's just quite amazing to have the strength and the will to be there and sit through that because it's just so difficult. So, I just want to commend you on all that you do and to be able to go through the pain that you do experience just to alleviate some, if any, just some stress and some of the hurt and the pain and to comfort them. I mean, it's quite amazing.
Oh, that's very, very kind. So I'm not trying to say that like it's not a great thing that we
Right,
do, but
right.
no matter how much loss and grief I experience in my job, it's never ever going to be what each of those families does. And I feel as though over time, I truly believe that it's a gift for me to be able to be part of it. When people trust you, and I'm going to get emotional, but when
Yeah.
people trust you that much in what is the worst time of their life,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's life changing. So
Yeah.
even though it's hard to be with a family who's saying goodbye to their child, or it's hard to be part of the planning for a funeral. The idea that these people put the trust in me
Mm-hmm.
and my organization to be in that moment, it, it's indescribable, truly. And I wouldn't change it. I
Yeah.
wouldn't change the heartache um, because it's made me a better person. It's made me a better mom. It's made me a better friend. It's made me a better executive director. Um, and honestly, when you see how much a parent loves their child in a way that is different than the way you and I love our children because they're healthy and life is normal and we're just
Right.
doing, they're driving us crazy and all those
Yeah.
things. But
Yeah.
when you see, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When you see a parent loving their child in what they know are going to be the last moments, that's life changing. It's life changing to see that kind of love. It just is. And that's what grief is. It's all just love, and the love of a child is, I believe, the greatest love any of us experience. And so being in those moments and knowing that our organization helps, even if it's a little itty bitty way or
Right.
a huge way or whatever it is, it matters, and isn't that what life's about, is doing things that matter. So it's been the greatest gift for me to be able to have these experiences.
That's probably one of the most inspiring statements I've heard in a really long time.
So this the family that I was talking about, their little girl's name was Lily. And Lily was sassy and tough and funny. And it's been interesting since she died. Her mom often will say that like she doesn't want people to talk about Lily as if she was this like sweet little cherub, because she wasn't. She was tough. And the first time when we were at that appointment we were talking about before, I was in the car with them and I was just chatting because I'm a talker. And Lily wanted to know why her mom's annoying friend would not stop talking. And I was the annoying friend.
Yep.
Yeah. So we had a lot of really special moments, let's just say. She wanted nothing to do with me, which is great. And I wanted her to like me because I was an elementary school teacher and like kids like me, whether they want to or not, you know?
Yeah.
So that was my goal that day with her, was to get her to like me. And I succeeded, which was amazing. And she and I exchanged stories. So that's how we bonded, was we shared stories back and forth while waiting in the waiting room, which was also an eye-opening experience. We were there in the waiting room for almost 2 hours, you know, with this child that's 6 to go to, you know, I mean, it's so much on these families. So at any rate, she had a Curious George that she loved, and we passed the Curious George back and forth. And each time we would pass it, we would tell a story. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Lily, back and forth. And so I was like, all right, I've got it. You know, like this kid loves me now. And on the drive back, her dad actually asked me to stop. He's like, please, Andie, not another story. I was like, no, Lily wants it. Lily gets it. Right. So I saw Lily a lot from that point forward. That was in September. And we got her into dance class. She actually is the same age as my daughters, and she took dance with one of them. We had a tea party together. We went to the park, and every time I saw her, I asked her if I could tell her a story, and she would say no every time. And she had a trach. So her little voice would come through the trach and be like, no. Oh, okay, but I tried faithfully. Yeah. She was adorable. So I tried every time, like, can I tell you a story today? And every single time she said no. Wow. So in the last 2 weeks of her life, she went into hospice on a Friday, and I went to her house pretty much every day. I would bring her mom a coffee and her dad an eclair. He loved eclairs from 7-Eleven. So every day I would just bring those and sit with them and spend time with Lily. And things kind of went quicker than they expected. And, you know, I brought my kids over to play and that kind of thing. And then we were there on a Tuesday evening. And by then Lily was on oxygen. And my girls, who were the same age at the time, sat with her and talked to her and didn't really think much of the fact that she was on oxygen and couldn't get off the bed. But afterward, Lily's mom asked me not to come back with the girls because it was too hard on Lily because she couldn't really play with them. And that was really hard. Like that was hard for my girls, but also hard to think that we had made Lily sad in any way, you know, that it made her sad she couldn't play. So I continued to go to visit. And on that Friday I went, and she had been sleeping a lot by then. And I, you know, every day without fail, Lily, can I tell you a story? And so that day I sat on her bed, and she was in a hospital bed at that point, and sat on her bed. And I said, can I tell you a story? And she said, yes. And I told her a story about Princess Lily, about how loved she was. And I sat and rubbed her feet and told her the story and finished the story. And every story started with once upon a time and ended with the end. And her mom walked in, and I said, she let me tell her a story. And her mom said, of course she did. And I didn't think much of that. I remember thinking, like, what does that even mean? And Lily died that day. And So I will forever feel like she gave me that gift of one last story. And after she died, I helped the family with the funeral, helped them plan the funeral. The mom asked me to do a portion of the eulogy. And so I put together a eulogy that was a story about Lily once upon a time and ended with the end. And when you think about it, like and I think most people hear that and they're like, oh, I could never do a child's eulogy. But when you have a parent ask you to do their child's eulogy, you don't say no to that.
Mm-mm.
No, you figure out how you're going to keep it together and you do it. And I remember my leg was trembling so hard during the funeral as I stood in front of the crowd for my portion of it. And but what an honor.
Right.
What an absolute beautiful honor to be asked to do that. So, I think about my own kids. I can't even imagine that happening, but I can't imagine anyone that I would want to do that for them.
Right.
So, deep breaths. So after that, I saw the reality of like what it looks like to pay for a funeral and what it looks like to plan a funeral and how much that is for families emotionally and financially. And so within about a week, I had my next board meeting and I had developed a program called that was funded by what I asked to have called the Lily Fund in honor of Lily. And I remember presenting it to them. It was, it is what we do now, which is we help pay for a portion of the funeral, or as much of it as we can. We give the family a gift card so that volunteers can come to their home and run errands for them, and then there's no money being exchanged. Often the families use the money to purchase funeral clothes because their children don't have clothes for funerals, and so they need those, and that's another huge cost. And we have developed a relationship with Tad Gerace at Mullins and Thompson, and he assists us by giving the funerals pretty much close to cost, so that our families don't go into debt, so that they can pay for their children's funerals. So we provide that, and so what we do, all because of the experience of Lily, it's essentially what happened with Lily. I just made into a program. And I presented it to the board, and one of my board members said, Andie, this is it. This is the way we need to grow. This is what we should be doing. And so that program, what it is we provide volunteers to prep everything for the funeral. They make ribbons, gold ribbons, if that's what the family wants, or if the child's favorite color is purple, we do purple ribbons. And then we have volunteers that go to the funeral and stand at the door with a basket filled with ribbons to pass out to everyone that shows up. We help with the food. So we get volunteers and other community members to donate food so the family doesn't have to worry about any of it. Essentially what we do is we sit in with the planning of the funeral, take notes, and then I go back to my team and I go back to our volunteers and we just get it done. And the family shows up the day of. And they have to send us pictures usually, and then we print the pictures, we put them in displays, we create some sort of memorial item, like we've done all different things, but where people write messages to the family about the child, so they have some sort of keepsake to walk away that's more than just a guest book. So that's where that kind of started, was because of Lily. And then we couldn't figure out what to call it. Like, we spent so much time brainstorming and nothing felt right at all. Like, every idea was like, that doesn't sound good. What can we call this program? And one day Lily's mom sent me a text, probably a year after we started it, if not longer. And the text said, what do you think of the name Stargazers? It's a kind of Lily, and all of us are staring at the stars longing for our children. So now that part of our program is our Stargazer program. And it's funny that it took so long for it to come, to be the decision, but it's perfect. Just, they are our Stargazers. Those families are our Stargazers. So about a year after Lily died, we had a full year with no children dying after Lily. it was such a great year in that way.
Wow.
And in the whole year, I was putting this program together, formalizing it, making connections in the community, making sure that we weren't stepping on toes or duplicating a service that was already in place.
Right.
And once it was solid and it was funded, we moved into the new year. And in January of that year, Kaylee Leahy lost her battle to leukemia. And in February of that year, Ryan Mott lost his battle to DIPG. And it just kept going. July of that year, Trey lost his battle to neuroblastoma. And then in September of that year, Josh Hardy lost his battle. So it was like we had this wonderful year with no loss, and I'm developing this program in ways that we can help. We're like, this is so great. We have it. It's budgeted, but we don't have anyone who needs it. This is awesome. And then that year just hit hard. It was a very, very difficult year for us as an organization, But in that difficult was the reality that we had this, right? We had this way to show up for these families that we wouldn't have had a year before. And Kaylee's also, we helped at the funeral, and I also gave a portion of the eulogy. Also just a wonderful, wonderful gift to be able to have that opportunity to do.
Well, it's something that you mentioned.
Yet?
I'm sorry?
I said, are you depressed yet?
No, it's such a, it's just something that hits you to your soul, like this topic, this reality. And every time I hear you talk, because when I started in the career that I'm in now was when I first heard about the Fairy Godmother Project, and that was in 2013. And I just remember thinking, holy cow, like, how the heck do these people do this? And it's just been such an inspiration. Every time we talk and every time I hear some of the stories I've heard, it still just hits you just as hard because it's such a harsh reality. And, you talked about Lily and about how the storytelling was your special thing and there was always the end, but you made it so there was not an end. She lives on. And her legacy lives on. And you're doing that for these families that every year, I know September is a very special month, every year their children get remembered and they have connections with other families, and that's because of you and your team. And there's just something that's just so profound about that just, it gives, your purpose is just so much more than I feel like a lot of people that have found their purpose. Yours is just so amazing. And I mean, you didn't take what happened and, just let it hit you hard. You made something of it. So the Fairy Godmother Project has evolved a lot. What other components do you guys have now? Like, it just sounds like you become part of their family, basically. They just welcome you right, like you just get right in there.
Well, and it's interesting because it depends. So I always tell our lead volunteers, every family gets a lead volunteer, that it's up to the family how much engagement we have. Some families aren't interested in it and some are. So it just varies from family to family. But what we've added on through the years, purely based on need and want from our families, like I try and keep my finger on the pulse so that I know what needs are not being met or what ways we could better meet their needs. So last year in December, we implemented a new program that we call Hope Link. And what that is it's providing hope, we hope, to our families, but it's support groups. So we have support groups for our remission and survivor families, and then we also have support groups for our bereaved families. And then in addition to that, we have a linking between families who could use a mentor or want someone who's a little further along in the bereavement journey, who wants to be connected to someone else who might be able to help them in some ways. And then a relationship is established there. I am able to be, I'm very empathetic. And so I can be that for our families, but I still don't get it. I just don't. And yes, I get it, what pediatric cancer looks like and what loss looks like for parents. I get it more than the average person on the street, but I still don't get it to the core. And I hope never to get it to the core. And so to me, it's very valuable to provide them with people who get it.
Yeah.
And we started also a bereavement retreat a couple of years ago. And that has been one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. Watching the families connect, because on a level that they can only connect with other people who've also had a child die. And even the, like having a child die from by suicide or having a child die from cancer, those are two very different things by an accident, very different. And so we have found value for our families to be connected to those who also had a child with cancer. Especially if that's sort of where they identify, meaning like their family was really a cancer family because it was such a long process, or they found comfort in the other people, or whatever it was. That connection is huge for our families, and they've developed a bond that's just amazing to watch, but also amazing to see how it's like it's a clique, right, of people.
Yeah.
It's not a clique because they let anybody in who's been through it. I mean, I've watched the moms literally embrace another mom who's new and hold her, a woman they've never met before, just be there. So it's intense, like, and I don't cry every day. It just seems like I do in this hour text line. So
no, and it's hard to talk about it. It's hard to you have a moment now. Things are still around you. Because you're fast paced. I know you. You're busy all the time. You got your hands in and everything. And right now you're still, so you can really feel and think of it. And it's emotion. It shows the rawness and it shows your compassion. I mean, it's real. So thank you for being vulnerable and opening up like that. And also September is a month that you guys are heavily focusing on those families, right? A lot of people don't know what September is. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's Childhood Cancer Awareness Month.
Yep.
And it's kind of disappointing this year because so much of what we have built up, we do, we have a Heart of Gold campaign that we do with Strong for Dom. And unfortunately, much of what we do is in the schools. It's at sporting events. So last year I had numerous juniors and seniors from high schools all over the counties, Spotsy, Stafford, and Caroline, that were like rallying the troops at their own high school to get people to wear ribbons. It was like a huge contest between the schools. It was really engaging. It was a great experience for them. I am a believer that I'm not going to talk to a parent of a kid that wants to volunteer for me. Like, if your child wants to volunteer for FGP, then I need to hear from your child directly. Yeah. And so that's what this whole program was like these kids had to be willing to take initiative, teachers and parents aside. It was a program through us that they could be engaged in. And the kids just ran with it and did amazing work. And so it's sort of hard that this year there just really isn't that. We're trying to get people to wear gold ribbons and that kind of thing, but the bang isn't quite there like it has been the last few years.
And you also have an amazing, I've been lucky enough to be able to attend it the last couple of years, but your fundraiser, and I'll let you kind of intro into the name because I'm sure, but talk a little bit about how you guys are adapting with your fundraiser.
So every year we do the Stardust Ball, and it has evolved over time. It's amazing the difference from the first one to last year's, and then this year's will be like nothing we ever imagined. This year, what we're doing, because we could not bring a large group together to do the event like we normally would, instead we offered watch parties to our supporters, and people purchase watch parties, sponsors purchase watch parties, and then they're doing small groups in their home. And we have a caterer that's delivering food to everyone. Smaller groups are getting dinner from Renato's. We have volunteers that are delivering the plates and cups and forks and spoons. And wine and beer and everything. And then
You said
everything will be
wine?
done online. Yes, lots of wine. And then there will be streaming from here. So I'll be here at my office with like a production team, which sounds much more exciting than it is, and with our auctioneer. And we will be using a platform called Event.gives, and we will stream the event. So anyone can attend it, quote unquote, attend. So the tickets are no longer available for the watch parties and the wine and watch that we were doing. But if people want to just tune in, they can. So it'll be very similar to our actual event. We are going to have a speaker, like we always do. One of our moms is going to speak about her experience with childhood cancer. He's been in remission for a year.
Wow.
And so she'll talk about their whole experience. He had leukemia, so he was in treatment for 3 years, so a really long time. But a wonderful family, like just they're adorable and amazing. And I'm sure her speech will be awesome. We also we have a few items up for auction. We made a choice this year after the pandemic hit, to not ask any of the people we normally would ask for items. So we don't have any silent auction items. We have six live auction items, two of which are kids' art projects. One is a beautiful chair that the kids came in and did like a social distanced handprint thing. The handprints were then turned into butterflies by an artist. And then we have a tray that was made. One of our FGP dads is actually in the process of making. And Adventure Brewing has, even though times are tough for everyone, they had offered us this amazing package, and I followed up with them after when things sort of started to get back to whatever we're in now in phase 3, and they said they still would be willing to donate it. Yeah, so
Wow.
It's a group gets to go and they get to make beer and they get to name the beer and they get to do the whole process. They get to decide what goes into the beer. They get to create the entire recipe. They get to help create the label, and then each person that goes gets a case of it, gets to go back 2 weeks after and gets a case of it, but then whatever's left will then be served to the public. So just a really cool experience.
That sounds so cool.
Yeah, I'm hoping it'll do well. And then we also have someone donated use of an RV for a week, Commonwealth Boat Brokers. And so that's another item that we'll be auctioning. So it'll be very different. We usually have about double that, and we don't this year. So, and then right now we have raffles going for dessert. And so anybody can do that. So like, even though you're not going, you could buy one and then it would be delivered to your house the night of the event.
How can they buy
the
that?
raffle,
How can they support the event? What could
it's
they
all
go
online.
to get?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's event.gives/S as in star, D dust, B ball 20. And all of that's on our Facebook page and our website, and probably somewhere on Instagram as well. Yeah.
We'll
And so, and people can
do it.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. And I think the event is going to be, it's the first one in the area. Some other ones have popped up since we got ours started, but with the delivering the food and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But we have done, Danielle Aarons is our event coordinator, and she has done a phenomenal job of thinking of every detail you could imagine. So I believe that it's going to go really, really well. And we have a lot of our supporters are pretty diehard supporters, and they're showing up for us. So that's really important.
And so the money raised at this event will go to support everything you've talked about today. Yes. The programs, the gift cards, the paying for the lawn services, just everything. So if somebody would like to not just participate in this specific event, but if they want to support the Fairy Godmother Project, make a donation, or get more information about volunteering, is that all on your website?
It is. So on the front of our website, which is fairygodmotherproject.org, we'd love to get a shorter name, but we just can't seem to find it. So there's a donate button on the front page, but then also there's all different things just to learn about us. people need services. If someone listening happens to have a child with cancer or know someone who does, very simple process. It's become an F2P family is what's on the website. Volunteering, our volunteer training, initial training is all online. We just luckily for us, we made a decision in January. I just said, you know what, let's put it online. Let's make a video of a formalized volunteer video, just so we have it, so that we don't, because what was happening is we would have one person show up for a volunteer training, and that person is valuable to us. However, for me to take 2 hours or more out of my day for one person is hard, because it just didn't work well. Right. And which sounds selfish, but it's not meant to be selfish. It's just in terms of using my time wisely as an organization.
Efficient.
And
Yes.
so we put it online, and so people can go online, they watch the video, they take a quiz, and then they have to do the other steps, which is background check, and they need references and that kind of thing. But then that's all they have to do, and they can become one of our volunteers. So it's a very simple process now that it's available online.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. That's I'm seriously gonna. Yeah, and it's hard because we get stuck in ruts sometimes, and we're like, oh, we don't have time. But I feel like we have a little more time, and when you volunteer, especially for causes like the Fairy Godmother Project, it feels like your purpose has become, you're seeing that time that is spent is so valuable, and it gives you more purpose in life. So I'm definitely gonna look into it. Yeah.
That would be great. And one of the things that we really focused on during the pandemic was making sure that we found ways to continue to provide volunteer opportunities for our volunteers. Because when you're in the throes of anything like that, the best thing you can do is do something for someone else. And so we had to shift some things around, obviously, because of the pandemic and social distancing and all those things. But we found ways that volunteers could do things from home. We found ways that volunteers could we deliver essentials to our families, paper towels, disinfectant wipes, toilet paper, all those things, so they don't have to go to the store. So we've been providing them during the whole pandemic. And so I set my garage up where volunteers could come and just drop stuff off. And then I would take a couple days to organize it into what each family wanted, along with one of my girls would help me. And then it was at the very beginning where we weren't sure if no one was really sure how much contact, if I had COVID and I touched it, would that then be? So we were we would let it sit over the course of a weekend, and then volunteers would show up to pick up the ones that were theirs to deliver. So we have a lot of different ways people can volunteer. And I mean, some of our volunteer jobs it could be an hour a month. It's not like we aren't structured that you have to commit to this much time. It's nothing like that. We try and be as accommodating to our volunteers as possible. What are your strengths? What do you want to do? Not what do we need you to do, but where do you fall in everything we offer, and how can we best serve you? Because while volunteering is considered selfless in a lot of ways, there's also a piece of it that is about getting that good feeling. And if I give you, say you're not good at tech stuff, and I'm like, okay, well, Devlin, I need you to work on our website. You're going to be like, what? I don't know how to do that. Right? Yeah. So we try and get things that are good. And if you're somebody, one of our volunteers just said the other day, the night of the ball, I'm totally happy to just drive stuff around town to people, which is perfect. That's what we need. Yeah. And so that's what she'll do, because that's what she's comfortable with. She doesn't want to be interacting with people. She doesn't want to be in front of the camera. So really looking at people's strengths and abilities and then using those is really what I try and do for our volunteers.
Oh, you're evolving the world of volunteering as well.
I don't know about that, but it's just always worked really well.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Well, I'm so excited about your event. I know there's other maybe golf tournaments coming up too to help support the Fairy Godmother Project. So when is that?
October 8th, and it's so many years ago, a family, the Harris family, they had a child who was diagnosed with DIPG, and their friends got together and did a golf tournament to raise money for them to help with the costs. And it was before we existed. And it was Carter's Crusaders golf tournament. So through the years, they continued to do it, and for a time, the proceeds would go to a different nonprofit that was focused on research, pediatric cancer research. And then as time went on, and I got to know Carter's mom, and she saw the value in what we did, she just made a decision that the event would benefit us. And Carter's family had so much support, so much support. And when I surveyed families before I started the organization, when I surveyed families and said, like, what could you have used more of? Carter's family was one of the ones that I surveyed, and she said nothing, that they had the support they needed, the meals, the people showing up, the financial support. They had all the things that FGP was looking to offer people. Right. So she understood the value of what I was proposing because she had it, but a lot of families here don't. So it's to benefit Carter's Crusaders. Well, it's Carter's Crusaders and it benefits us. And it's a wonderful way for people to come out and remember this boy. So Carter would die when he was 6. He would be 17. He'd be starting his senior year this year. And so, it's a hard year. It's a hard year for his family because we had to cancel or postpone the May tournament.
Yeah. And
that was hard. It's their day where everyone shows up for them. And so I'm just glad we're able to do it in October, even though it'll be a little bit different. But October 8th, at least, help. And we still are looking for golfers, sponsors, and all that good stuff.
And they can find all of this information at your website as well?
Yep. Everything's on the website, and then also on... What's that?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
The website, our Facebook page is really active. So that's where the majority of our information can be found. We have events on there, and we do a lot of posting about what's happening and how people can help and all that kind of stuff.
What is the Facebook page name?
Just Fairy Godmother Project. It's VAFG is what the I don't know what handle. That's called.
Handle.
The handle, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And I think lots of times people get confused. They try and find it because they put in the Fairy Godmother Project, but the organization is not it's actually Fairy Godmother Project. We own the name Fairy Godmother Project. So I think sometimes people try and tag us and they can't because they're trying to find the Fairy Godmother Project. So
I see.
Just a little tip. Yeah.
Well, Andie, you and your team, you're just, I'll say it over and over again, y'all are amazing. You are more than fairy godmothers. You have just really put a light in the community here, and I'm so excited to see it continue to evolve, to be a part, to volunteer. Is there if anyone's out there listening that would like to help, or any last words that you would like to give anyone listening that, wants to do good, or any advice for anybody?
Well, one of the things I find people say to me a lot, especially when we're doing a fundraising campaign or something I can only give, or I can only give this much time. And so there's this assumption that if you only have $10 to give Fairy Godmother Project, there's no point. Or if you only have 1 hour a month to give Fairy Godmother Project, there's no point. But what I'd like you to know is that if people didn't give us those $10 donations, we wouldn't be where we are right now. We don't survive we aren't getting $25,000 donations or big corporate sponsorships. I mean, we are like the little engine that could. I mean, we just keep on going, but we are supported by people in the community that are all different socioeconomic levels. But if every person thought, I only have that much money to give, then we would not exist. And one of my favorite stories, and I've probably told it before, is one day, on the exact same day, we got the biggest donation we'd ever gotten in our whole history. It was a $10,000 check. And on the exact same day, we got a $6.35 donation or something to that effect from a little girl who had done, I think she had sold lemonade. Oh. And the thing that I wanted to get across to people was both of them gave at the level they could.
Yep.
And that's all we ask of people, is that if you feel moved to engage with us, whether it's only as a volunteer, there's no such thing as only as a volunteer. There's no such thing as only making a $10 donation.
Right.
Every single bit is every piece of the puzzle is what makes us who we are and where we are today. So that would be my tidbit.
Oh, gosh, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your very busy day and, chatting with me. And I hope the event goes well. I'll be tuning in and trying to get some dessert raffles and maybe even I'll be driving around the wine. I don't know.
Yeah,
But thank you so much. I know, you never know. But thank you so much for your time. And everyone, thank you for watching. I had Andie McConnell here today, the Executive Director of Fairy Godmother Project, and we will be back next week with another episode of Reiley's Roundup.